Welcome back to our series, The Delegation Shift. Let go to level up. This series is focused on providing tools for growth minded leaders ready to move forward beyond the weeds and into their next level.
Today's episode is a little spicy, but necessary. We're talking about why, if it's not systematized, it's not delegatable.
That's right, because what is delegation without systems? That's just chaos with a to do list. And that's not good for anybody, not the delegator, not the delegatee. Nobody wins in this situation.
Absolutely. And I feel like if your processes only exist in your head, let's be honest, you're not delegating because you're just transferring the confusion, right? If you are giving this process that lives in your head to someone, you're probably not being clear enough and they don't know all that you know because you've probably been on autopilot. You know this process for however long you've been doing it. And so you really just don't think about relaying all that information because it just lives in your head. And so I think that when we talk systems, it's all about also these processes that live in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge thing that people don't understand or they miss because they're like, well, you just do these couple of steps. And you're like, yeah, but what do I have to click here? And do I need to change this setting here? It's all of those things that you do, like you said, on autopilot. And it's like if systems are there, that's what makes delegation work. They're the secret sauce, right? Behind a smooth transition from you doing the task to somebody else doing the task and then sustainable scaling because it allows you as a business owner to have confidence in the person that's doing the task. And then that establishes additional trust that the tasks are going to be done correctly the first time without mistakes.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that systems can do so many things. The benefit to them of having systems in place creates consistency, cuts down on rework, and constantly checking in, that micromanaging tendency. It gives your team confidence and clarity. It really helps empower people to know what ultimately success looks like. And it makes your business scalable. They're not all depending on you because you're the one that holds all the answers to all the things. So I think they're essential.
And I think something that business owners, CEOs, department leads, whoever it is that's delegating, they need to ask themselves, is this something that somebody else could do without me explaining it every single time? Like if there is something that doesn't have these crazy nuances in it or that needs several hands touching it, can you delegate it? Can you give it to somebody else? Give them the instructions once, give clear feedback, and then from that moment on, they take care of it into the future so that you can focus on other things.
Absolutely. This just made me remember something that someone explained delegation to me in a way, like if you were to describe to a brand new parent how to change a baby's diaper, they were like, you wouldn't just explain, okay, do this and this, these two steps, because it's natural to you because you've maybe done it 100 times. A brand new parent, you're going to have to say, no, first you go to the store and then you buy this and you buy this and then you come home and you have to unpack it. And so if you think about the system, the process of doing something, if you can break it down to all the steps that, again, live in your head because you've done it 1,000 times, if you break it down well enough, you're going to be teaching someone all the steps so that you don't have to explain it every single time, like you said. So that just made me think of it. Someone explained that a long time ago to me. And I think it's like, it resonated with me, obviously, because I'm a parent and I think the parents listening will get it as well. But even if you think of it as, how to make dinner or water your plants or whatever it is, there's a process. There's so many steps that you don't even realize you take in order to get it done. So I think that if the answer is no, that I cannot give this over to someone without explaining it every single time, it's time that you figure out a system. So I want to be clear that when we're talking about systems, we're not just talking about the softwares out there, the platforms out there, unless that's what's going to solve this problem, of course. But what we're talking about is a system or a process that is teachable and can be handed off to someone else moving forward. So I think that when you think of systemizing things, and creating processes, it doesn't always involve technology or at least fully handing it over or buying a whole new software just to tackle it. We're talking just a process.
Right. It's not an investment necessarily, like you said, in a software or a platform. It's more of an investment of your time, is what you're really investing in at the get go when it comes to delegation. And you don't have to systemize everything at once, because if it's a project that will take time to achieve, but once you do the delegation, that weight's lifted off your shoulder. Like I said, it's an investment of time, and knowing that you are not the only person that is fully and solely responsible for completing this task will renew your energy in what you're doing in your business. And that's why you started the business, right? Is to continue to grow what your passion is. So having that re-energization of wanting to do things in your business is where you want to be. But where do you start, right? Where do you start realizing what needs to have a system first versus another thing?
Right. So I get asked this all the time, especially in our delegation calls with clients, because I think when you are in the midst of overwhelm, it actually is really hard to think of what do I delegate first. It feels overwhelming to delegate when you're having that feeling. And so I like to encourage people to start with anything that you're doing daily or weekly, the high frequency things that are repeated. So similar to, we talked about a stop list in a former episode, and we don't want you to recreate the wheel and a whole nother to-do list, but maybe just start by using the stop list that we talked about last time, or your existing to-do list, whatever it is. But really think about what you're doing on a daily or weekly basis and start there. So, once you start the habit of delegating, I think that you can grow from there, but really identifying what would be a pretty small lift that it's clear, easy for you to delegate, and just, identifying the tasks that don't have to be done by you is really where it starts. And especially the small, repeatable daily, weekly things.
Yeah, absolutely. When you said like make a stop list, I do that all the time when I'm overwhelmed with like things that have to happen at the house. And I'm like, okay, I just need to make a checklist of everything that I need to do room by room and task by task, so that I can just mark one thing off at a time and celebrate that win. It's not a very big win, but it's a win if I've completed it and I dusted the counters that day. Like that's the win for me. But when you're looking at things that you're going to delegate to somebody else, you also need to look for the things that are multiple steps or include multiple tools, because these are prime situations for confusion and for rework if they're not mapped out correctly and not transferred. The knowledge is not transferred to the person who you're delegating this to properly. And the keyword here is properly. Sure, you can like write down all of the lists and the task and say, okay, these are the platforms that you use, and this is what you do. But what do I do in that platform? What part of that platform goes into this task? And once I'm out of that platform, does it automatically, is it automated to go here? Do I need to make a manual step? Is there something that I need to click? Because that's where steps are going to get missed. That's where errors are going to happen. And it's just one of those things that you have to be very clear and very detailed about the information that you're doing. And when I was prepping for this recording, do you remember a couple of weeks ago when I completely cleared your Calendly availability?
Yes.
That was me. Thankfully, I am proficient in Calendly, so we were able to fix it quickly. But imagine if you had handed off a task to somebody who was not proficient in Calendly, and you were like, hey, can you just go in here and do this for me and create this and attach this? And they did that. And then they were like, I don't, I don't know what I did. I don't know how to fix it. And it's all gone. That would have been a huge issue. Did I make an error? Yes. We're humans. Errors are going to happen. They're going to happen when you delegate tasks. They're going to happen when you're explaining tasks. You may miss a step in your task, but it could have caused this huge issue, and your calendar could have been inundated with so many meetings because I was like, nope, she's available 24/7, 7 days a week. Go ahead and schedule. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not clear on the task and the steps that you're delegating, it could be a huge, huge issue.
Right. And I think that it's also important that the when you're delegating something where the steps need to be laid out carefully, I'm a huge proponent, and I know I've said it probably 100 times before, but you don't have to necessarily write down all these steps in detail. Record a voice memo, record a video walkthrough. Don't feel the pressure to make this perfect resource. As long as you are as clear as you can with all of the steps that you can think of and set plenty of opportunities for check-ins and questions, they can create the resource as they go. So I just want to make sure that that's clear too, that you don't have to feel the pressure of delegating perfectly with this beautiful SOP every time, for sure. So some of the other places that, yeah, I know we talked about just that daily, weekly stop list that we already talked about, starting there for creating systems and processes. But some of the other great places that I like to suggest people start is your client onboarding or offboarding process. That is very, very often a task that I hear business owners tell me that either they are spending too much time on doing everything themselves or manually that could be automated, right? This client onboarding is very much a process that can be delegated to someone or something to handle. So you aren't spending so much time and really you're able to do the client facing high touch things, but everything else should be able to be delegated. And we also often see it where clients actually are not spending very much time at all on those processes because there's too much to do and they don't have time. And so then that leads to, less of a wow factor that they are hoping for, right? So that's a huge area. Other places that we see often is calendar and email management. So many people tell me I spend way too much time on my calendar or rescheduling things or following up with people to schedule, or your email. I mean, the amount of people we have said that have hundreds of thousands of emails, and so they're losing things or spending too much time in their email. That's a really big one. So creating processes for both and systems for both that make it easy for you to get in there and handle it. Again, like you mentioned, Calendly, that's a great system to put in place for calendar management if you want to just at least have that one tool. You still might need a human touch, but it should help. Social media and content creation, that's a huge area where you can create processes and systems around it, right? We talk with clients all the time. Batch create content on one day, then delegate the rest and for someone else to then get it live. But again, really creating processes around it will help that brain drain, I think. And then also like reporting and check-ins. So there's just so many things that, putting systems around these areas, and there's probably 100 other examples that I could think of.
Oh, yeah.
But those are the most common ones that I think of. And I think it just is so important to identify them. And really, when I think of systemizing something, it's simplifying it for you, right? And I am in my simplify season for sure. So really big on finding the process as simple as possible, delegating what I can so that way I can show up as my best self in all the other areas that I'm supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned when you were talking about the client onboarding and offboarding, like finding a tool. So even if you do find a tool and it's not necessarily a system that you're doing manually, by finding a tool and delegating that task to somebody else, that person is managing the tool. You still are hands off on that task. So if you can find a tool that they can still have ownership of and they can make sure is working correctly, it's still off of your plate, other than the regular routine check-ins and, the syncs where you're giving each other feedback or answering questions. It's still not on your plate. So a good rule of thumb with all of these tasks is if it happens often, if it touches a client, or if it involves tools, it is system worthy. And a system should be created for it.
Absolutely agree. And I know that some of you are thinking, like I mentioned earlier, I don't have time to build systems right now. Most of our clients and our listeners are overwhelmed business owners. And I mean, let's be honest, even those of us who aren't business owners, but we are juggling multiple hats, we all need systems too. And there's definitely, even in your home, we all need systems. So I think there's a lot of people who can relate. right to that. And I think it's just important to remember that we all have a finite amount of time. And so because of that, time is money. And if you're spending your time doing repeatable things that could be systemized or delegated, I think rather than focusing on ROI generating things, networking things, or just self care things, whatever that might be, I think that we have to change our perspective in saying that we don't have time to create these systems.
Yeah, because like you said, like we all do not have time. It's just part of being busy. It's part of being working adults. It's part of being parents. It's part of running a household. So we hear you. We understand that time is of the essence, and we totally get that. And that's why, like Ashley said, record your screen when you are completing a task that you want to delegate to somebody. And you can record through so many different platforms and ones that you do not need to purchase, ones that you do not need to sign up for a subscription. You can record yourself doing a Google Meet walkthrough with a screen share. Project management tools have the recording capability, and then you can just click and assign it straight to that task and send it off to the person who's going to be doing it. You can use Loom. You can use Zoom. There's so many different platforms that you can use to record or do a voice memo. So don't think because you don't have it currently set up as a recording system for that purpose that you can't use it for that purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a huge, huge fan of this, especially as time has gone on and I've kind of been able to more catch myself in trying to explain something as I'm typing it out. Like, wait, there's this tool. So I'm a huge fan of, like, we use ClickUp at Elevate, and when I go to delegate something or assign a task to someone, huge fan of record it instead of typing out the steps 1 through 10 that I need or the final deliverable or anything. I just assign it and I quickly record a video walkthrough of it within ClickUp. And that has been a beautiful thing. And then even better is, let's just say I assign something to you. I've seen you then record a video back to me with what you've done and asking for my feedback. And so there's this, like asynchronous type of thing too, where you and I are in different time zones. You and I are busy doing all kinds of things. And so we are able to co-work through whatever it might be without ever having to finagle a meeting, right? So I think that's also something worth saying, is that you really don't, it doesn't have to be super complicated if you're just using your resources in a way that works. And there's a huge benefit to recordings versus a live meeting too, because you can stop, you can rewind, you can fast forward, whatever it is, without needing to kind of waste the other person's time as you figure it out, or you think of your questions as soon as the call is done, whatever it might be. So I don't know, I'm a huge fan of it. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do is make sure you're narrating as you go. You know, and that's the other thing, is it's better than typing it all out, because I guarantee you, let's use the how to make dinner example. If I were to just type out how I made this one thing that I'm asking someone else to make for me, I'm probably going to leave something out. But if I actually walk you through every single step of it and tell you what I'm doing, where I'm grabbing the spices from, whatever it is, that I probably wouldn't, I would have just said, use, turmeric, but I wouldn't have said where to grab it. And so there's just different things to be aware of as you navigate through what you're doing, is just talk through every single step like you're talking to a fifth grader. So that way it's really clear and there's limited questions and back and forth for sure.
Yeah, I think narrating makes a huge difference when we here at Elevate record things to then pass off or to show somebody, because then you can really explain what your thought process was while you were creating something, or how to walk through the step. Because like you said, some things live in your brain. And using the dinner example, I don't know where your pots are. Where are they? Which drawer? Where do I find them? What cupboard? Like, I don't know where to look for them. I can make dinner. I can follow those steps, but I don't know where to find anything that I need in order to make dinner. So it's not just the task itself, it's what do you need in order to do that. So, and I think that once you've recorded, sent all of your voice memos, given feedback, then it needs to be saved somewhere. It cannot just live in this, here's my list of recordings that I have. It needs to live somewhere. So you're either going to want to organize it or delegate that task to have that stuff organized. You want to organize it in whatever document organization tool you're using, whether that is OneDrive or Google Drive or Notion, whatever SOP hub you're using, so that you can refer back to it on a regular basis or as often as you need to.
Yeah, exactly. And the beautiful thing about this too is, like I said, all you have to do is record this, and then if there is no written process on this already, the person you're delegating to, now part of what you're delegating not only is getting the process done, but also creating a written resource, and even maybe a new video. Once things are fully updated with things, they could also redo the video or take screenshots to add to the written part. So there's so many ways that they can then create this written resource, which again, I think just builds that confidence of you delegating. To know and to see the process that they're following gives that confidence and less tendency to micromanage, I think, as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think that once you are at that point where you are transferring the ownership of the task, I would ask your teammates or your team member, whoever is supporting you, invite them to refine it as well. Not just do the
Yes.
doing, but be strategic in how they're doing it, because they may notice things that you forgot to mention. And then they're going to come to you with a clarifying question. Don't be afraid of questions. Don't be irritated by questions, because that's only going to allow the system that you're setting up to run smoother. And it's a better way to frame things out, right? So often when you're doing something for so long, you are so like tunnel vision, right? You have tunnel vision because you've been doing it for so long, but you're too close to notice areas of improvement where something could be more efficient. And by opening that door for refinement, that gives you the chance to refine it to a better and more efficient system or process that you already have in place.
Right, absolutely. I think that empowering someone else to not only take over this process, but say, and if you see a way to make it easier, please let me know. Because sometimes just a new pair of eyes on something, beautiful things can come from that. So I have seen it with Elevate. And so I am definitely a huge fan of, once you get the hang of how I do it, please let me know if you see something to make it better. So I love that. And I think it's a really big, a really important reminder to remember that done is better than perfect. A rough system, regardless of what it is, it will beat no system every time. So even if you just start with a rough draft version, it is better than not having one at all. So I think just you have to start somewhere, and allowing the process to kind of evolve and become better than it was. Just, I think, hang in there. It is better than not having one at all.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about this more in our next episode, but a mindset shift when it comes to having systems. Systemizing is leadership. Mic drop,
Yeah.
systemizing is leadership. Remember that, write it down, put it on a post-it, put it on your computer, but remember that systemizing is leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sometimes people hear systems and it's boring to them. It's not boring to us here, but I think that some people feel maybe it's boring, it's not exciting, it's not a sexy word, right? Like, people don't get excited to talk about systems unless you're like us. But I think that it just is a reminder that creating systems is not adding to your to-do list. It's actually trying to simplify your to-do list. Like I said earlier, it is making sure that you aren't the bottleneck. Things aren't just living in your head and your head alone. You are creating expectations and ways that we get things done at, XYZ business. So that way it empowers others to help you get things done and really re-strategize your time. So again, I think it's just like, it's systemizing. Systemizing is really simplifying in the end, in that you don't have to own and have a handle on everything. So yeah, obviously such a huge fan of it, and I could go on and on.
Yeah, well, and you're not meant to do everything as a business owner. You're not meant to do everything as a human. So you're meant to be in a business, you are meant to be the leader. You're building something that needs to be sustainable. And in order to do that, you have to create systems that work, or at the very least, you have to bring someone in that can help you create those systems for the long-term business plan. Because if you don't have the systems, things are constantly going to be on your plate that don't necessarily need to be.
Right. And I think that, I mean, as you were talking, what it made me realize too is that let's just say there's a system that is now you've delegated it, you've written it down, there's a nice SOP tagged along with it, right? There's a resource on how to follow this process, this system for your client onboarding, for example. When and if there needs to be a pivot in the way that you are systematizing and process of your client onboarding, it's so much easier to change, right? You can visually see the change and make sure that that change is now executed every single time versus when it's something that just lives in your brain and you're kind of just like flying by the seat of your pants of this process that lives in your brain. It's a lot harder to implement change that is a positive change because it's more you're working by habit versus a process. And so consistency will also fall through when it comes to improvements or change, which we know in business happens every day. So I just thought of that as another thing as you were talking that it's really beneficial to do. And I think that another thing that I thought of was going back to I don't have time to do this. Yes, it might take you 10 minutes to do this task yourself. And it might feel like it's going to take you 30 minutes or an hour, whatever it is. It probably feels like 100 hours at the time to train someone else to do this, right? You have that feeling of, gosh, I could just get this done in 10 minutes and it feels better. But just imagine how many 10 minutes is it going to take you to do it over and over and over. Imagine if you did just dedicate, say, 30 minutes to train someone else to do this. Again, just record the video, put it together, send it over in 30 minutes. Yes, it took you longer this time, but how many hours is it going to save you in the future by now no longer owning this system and process? So I think there is a trade, but in your time today, but there's a huge ROI on it later.
Well, and like you said, it's minutes versus hours. Like think about that. 30 minutes versus how many hours? Like that hours is a question mark. You don't know how many hours you are replacing by just training for 30 minutes. And that's the mindset shift, right? Train once, scale forever. And that's the game changer when it comes to putting things in systems as you delegate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to our Delegation Shift series. If this episode got you one step closer to freedom, hit follow and share it with a fellow business owner. And don't forget to grab your free workbook and tools with the link in the show notes. You've got this.